Sometimes it feels like you blink and the whole world's kind of shifted. That's sort of how the China-US trade war felt to me. One minute, things are sort of humming along. The next, boom, major economies are really locking horns.
Yeah, it escalated quickly.
So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that, this huge economic clash.
Right.
Our mission really is pretty straightforward. Give you a clear picture of how it all started back in 2018.
Yep, 2018.
What actually happened, what the real impact was on the ground, and kind of where things stand today.
Think of it like the essential guide.
Exactly, your cheat sheet to this really dramatic economic showdown.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, it's key to get that this wasn't just some, dry economic debate happening in boardrooms.
No way.
This trade war had real ripple effects. It touched everything from, the prices you paid for stuff to the future of technology, even the bigger picture, the whole geopolitical landscape.
So yeah, buckle up. We're about to unpack something pretty significant here. Okay, let's unpack it then. Let's rewind. 2018. Picture the scene. The global economy's ticking along. The U.S. is this huge consumer market. China's become this, incredible manufacturing powerhouse.
The world's factory, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But under the surface of all that buying and selling, there was, some friction building up.
For sure. Long-term stuff.
We're talking about things like a big trade imbalance, the U.S. buying way more from China than it was selling to China.
Persistent deficit.
And then these constant complaints from American companies saying their tech, their innovations were being unfairly copied or, stolen.
Intellectual property theft, yeah. That was a huge one.
And you can't forget the whole political side, pressure about American manufacturing jobs heading overseas. That was always simmering.
That's right. These weren't exactly new issues, but 2018 felt like a real turning point. An escalation.
Definitely.
The U.S. administration at the time, their main argument was that China was playing unfairly, engaging in unfair trade practices.
What did that actually mean, though, in practice?
Well, several things. Big state subsidies, for one. The Chinese government giving financial help to its own companies.
Making their products cheaper.
Exactly. Cheaper to make, cheaper to export. Then there were accusations about currency manipulation.
Right, keeping the yuan artificially low.
That was the suspicion. Making Chinese goods cheaper for Americans and American goods pricier for the Chinese.
And the big one?
And the big one, yeah. Alleged widespread theft of American IP. Intellectual property. U.S. businesses claimed it cost them billions.
So, facing all that, the U.S. response was pretty direct. An economic weapon, basically.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. Now, just simply put, a tariff is just a tax, right? A tax on goods coming into the country.
Makes imports more expensive.
Yeah. So, imagine your phone, made in China, a tariff gets slapped on it, the cost to import it goes up.
And that cost often gets passed on.
Right, potentially meaning a higher price for you in the store. The basic idea is, make imports less appealing, get people buying local, buying American.
Simple concept.
Simple concept, yeah, but the fallout. Anything but simple.
And China's reaction, well, they didn't just take it lying down.
No.
They hit back fast, imposed their own tariffs on a whole bunch of American goods.
So suddenly American stuff going to China got more expensive for them.
Exactly. Think about the impact there.
We're talking some major American exports getting hit.
Oh, yeah. Soybeans, for instance. Huge agricultural export for the U.S.
Devastating for farmers.
Absolutely. Suddenly faced higher taxes going into China, their biggest market, directly hitting livelihoods. American cars, too. Even stuff like American whiskey.
Iconic product.
Became targets. It really showed just how tangled up these two economies were.
It wasn't just one side imposing taxes. It became this immediate back and forth.
Tit for tat, exactly.
Yeah.
Each side trying to ramp up the pressure, increasing tariffs on the other guy's stuff.
And the scale was just massive, wasn't it?
Incredible scale. When all was said and done, tariffs got slapped on over, $550 billion worth of goods traded between them.
Wow. $550 billion.
That's a staggering amount of economic activity suddenly facing these new taxes. And like you said, the impact just spread out everywhere.
Absolutely. You had American farmers who become so reliant on China.
Huge reliance.
Suddenly seeing their biggest market just shrink dramatically. Then you had major Chinese tech firms. Huawei is the obvious example.
The blacklist, yeah.
Basically blacklisted by the U.S., cut off or severely limited from American tech and markets. Huge blow.
But it wasn't just the giants, was it?
No, not at all. Companies like Apple, with these incredibly complex supply chains stretching across both countries,
Manufacturing in China, designing in the U.S.
they were really caught in the crossfire. Trying to navigate these new tariffs, the uncertainty, it was a nightmare for them.
And think bigger picture. The whole global system of supply chains built up over decades to be super efficient.
Just thrown into chaos.
Pretty much. Businesses scrambling, trying to figure out how to adapt, where to source things from, major disruption.
Okay, so we've got these massive tariffs flying back and forth. The logical next question is, who actually got hurt more?
Yeah, who felt the pinch the most? It's a complicated picture. Economists are still debating the full impact, honestly.
But we can point to some clear effects, right?
Oh, definitely. We can see where the pain points were.
Okay, so for American consumers, what was the deal?
Well, one really direct thing was prices going up for a lot of imported goods.
Stuff made in China?
Yeah, electronics, clothes, furniture, household items. If they were made in China and got hit with tariffs, chances are they got more expensive.
You felt it at the checkout.
You likely did.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, American farmers, they faced a genuine crisis.
Losing that huge Chinese market for soybeans, corn.
It led to serious financial hardship. A lot of them ended up relying on government bailouts just to stay afloat.
Really highlights the risk, doesn't it? Relying so heavily on one single big customer.
Absolutely. A tough lesson relearned globally about diversifying markets.
And on the Chinese side, how did they handle it?
Well, some factories definitely slowed down. Less demand from the U.S. meant less production needed for certain goods. But the Chinese economy also showed, well, a pretty remarkable ability to adapt, actually.
How so?
We saw a really quick pivot. They started pushing hard into new markets, other parts of Asia, Europe, Latin America.
Okay, for new buyers.
Exactly. And Chinese companies got busy finding alternative suppliers, trying to cut their dependence on American parts and components.
So resilience was key.
Resilience, adaptation. That's crucial when you assess the impact. And you have to remember the role of the Chinese government.
Right, state-led capitalism.
They were actively guiding and supporting this shift through various economic policies. It wasn't just companies acting alone.
Which brings us to the point that this wasn't just about dollars and cents, was it? This trade war had a huge political dimension.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't economics in a vacuum at all. It became a very visible symbol, a key part of the Trump administration's America First agenda.
That push to sort of rebalance global trade, prioritize American industry.
Challenge what they saw as unfair deals.
Yeah.
Protect domestic jobs. That was the narrative.
And for China, how did they frame it politically?
Well, arguably, the trade war just poured fuel on their existing drive for self-reliance.
Especially in tech.
Especially in critical technologies, yeah.
Yeah.
The U.S. actions kind of underscored for Beijing the need to develop their own independent capabilities. Semiconductors, AI, that sort of thing.
It became strategic. National security.
Exactly. It went way beyond just economics. It was about strategic autonomy. So you could almost ask, was the trade war really about tariffs in the end?
Or was it more about signaling something bigger?
Signaling a fundamental clash, maybe. Yeah. A disagreement about how the global economy should work in the 21st century. It certainly looked that way.
And looking even broader, it felt like a clash of systems, didn't it?
Definitely. You had the U.S. model, more market-driven capitalism.
Running up against China's model.
State-led capitalism, where the government plays a much more hands-on role in the economy.
Plus, the underlying stuff. Democracy versus a more authoritarian system.
East versus West, maybe. A shifting global power balance. All that was wrapped up in it, too.
And what's really interesting is how those political undercurrents are still shaping things now.
They really are. I mean, look, we have a different administration in the U.S. now.
Right.
But most of those tariffs, they're still there, still in place.
Which tells you something.
It signals a pretty fundamental, maybe bipartisan shift in U.S. strategy towards China. It's moved beyond just tariffs on, socks and TVs.
It's about containment now. Economic containment.
That's how many analysts see it, especially targeting those really vital technology sectors.
Like semiconductors.
Semiconductors, AI, green energy tech. These are seen as the battlegrounds now.
Because they're linked to future power.
Exactly. They're not just about economic competition anymore. They're seen as critical for geopolitical influence, for national security in the long run.
So it's broadened out. It's not just about the trade balance for widgets anymore.
Not at all. It's a much bigger, more complex competition now, focused on who controls the key technologies of the future.
So let's circle back. Did the trade war actually solve anything? Did it achieve its original goals?
Well, if the goal was to fundamentally change specific Chinese trade practices overnight through tariffs alone, maybe not directly. It's debatable how much changed solely because of the tariffs.
But it undeniably had a massive impact.
Oh, absolutely massive. It forced companies everywhere to seriously rethink their supply chains, make them more resilient, maybe less reliant on one country.
Governments, too, rethinking trade policy.
Definitely. Reconsidering relationships with major partners. And it really exposed the vulnerabilities, didn't it? How interconnected we all are, but also how risky that can be.
So maybe it didn't solve the initial problem in the way it was framed.
Perhaps not.
But it totally changed the rules of the game for global economic engagement.
I think that's fair to say. It was a stark reminder of that deep interdependence, like you said, but also the potential downsides, the vulnerabilities.
So less about a clear winner and loser.
Much less about that, and more about recognizing that this was maybe just the start.
The start of what?
The beginning, perhaps, of a much longer-term strategic rivalry. The core issues haven't gone away.
Competition over tech leadership, different economic systems.
The shifting global power dynamics, all still there. In many ways, you could say the tariff war was just the opening act.
Of a much longer play.
A longer, more complex strategic competition that's probably going to define a lot of the 21st century.
That really leaves you with something to chew on, doesn't it?
For sure.
The China-U.S. trade war wasn't just some blip, some short-term spat. It was a major turning point with consequences that are still unfolding all around us.
Absolutely.
And you have to wonder, what does this ongoing rivalry actually mean for the future? For innovation, for global cooperation, for the economy we all live in?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one we'll likely be grappling with for a very long time.